Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
And Bid Steelers. I am Sam Fetterman. That is Jonathan Lidskin. We're back on your air after not too long away. We were just doing the Kentucky preview, and now we're doing the San Diego State preview. Austin Mitchell is with us. Austin, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Sam and Jonathan.
Always a pleasure to have one of my favorite latest happenings with Caleb Grill members on.
It is exciting time for San Diego State. The final year of the Mountain West as we know it. And this has the chance to be a truly really, really special San Diego State team because of what they were able to do this offseason. Not in terms of who they got from the transfer portal, but who they didn't lose as a program that I remember Austin texted me last year when a bunch of guys hit the portal for San Diego State. I was like, the Mountain West is dying. Now, Mountain West might be dying as we know it, but San Diego State isn't dying. And San Diego State was fine last year. They're going to be really good this year because they bring a couple key guys back. And they did make some noise in the portal. Brian Dutcher made some waves this offseason with keeping Magungwath and Miles Bird. Those are the two main pieces. Those two guys are going to be among the two best players in the Mountain West this season. Austin, what does it mean to the program to get those guys back in this era?
I mean, the best gets sometimes are just keeping what you already have. You're looking at two of the best defenders, not just in the Mountain West, but the country, that have high offensive potentials too. You're looking at guys with NBA athleticism, guys that are already locked into Brian Dutcher's culture. They're bought into what he wants and his ways of winning that have obviously worked throughout his career. And so keeping those two guys to set the tone moving forward is just massive for Brian.
Let's talk about Magungwath. This is a guy who redshirted his first season at San Diego State. Last year, burst onto the scene, started every game that he played in. And even when he doesn't score, he makes an impact because he was number 4 in the country in block rate, 14.1. And he did that with a foul rate of just 3 fouls per 40 minutes. He only played 52% of the minutes. But he did have a bunch of games late January, early February, where he completely took over offensively as well as defensively. How high is the ceiling for Magungwath this year in year 2 playing minutes?
I mean, the ceiling for Magoon there is no ceiling. It's the sky, it's space. I think we've seen a glimpse of what he could do. That Fresno State game last year offensively, where he showcased his passing, his ball handling, his deep shooting. He's hitting pull-up threes. That's something a 7-footer that specializes in defense should not be able to do. And I mean, we've seen big guys take a leap after sitting on the bench with Brian Dutcher in the past. You got Jaden Ledee just a few years ago, who plays more of a role with that team that goes to the national championship and comes in the next year as offensive focal point and turns into an All-American caliber player and future NBA player. I believe he's in the G League now. And that's the type of ceiling you can expect out of Magungwath, I think. Obviously, very different play styles, but both big men that have the ability to take over a game on both sides of the ball.
And pairing him back with Miles Bird, who last year was awesome, took a huge step forward, especially on the offensive side of the ball, going from a 98 to a 107 offensive rating. They get him back. Jonathan, what do you like about Miles Bird? Because I feel like it's so easy to just read off the stats, but what do we like about Miles Bird's game?
Aggressiveness, plays really hard, gets to the rim. Not a tremendous shooter, but like can get downhill with pretty much against anyone. Does it on both ends of the floor. I mean, there was a reason that like this guy was a legit NBA prospect, and he's probably a better shooter than what he showed last year. It's just exciting with him because I feel like we waited a couple years for this breakout to come, and last year it finally did, and the team wasn't quite as good as what they had couple years. But now he has a chance to prove himself with a group that does have a chance to be really good. I mean, I think he's going to lead this team in scoring. I think, we mentioned Glock. I think there's an offensive leap coming for him too. But I just think that this is a much better put together offensive team than they had a season ago.
113th in offense last year. They were 16th in defense. This has been a program defined by its defense. The defensive finishes in the last 15 years: 2, 44, 13, 7, 5, 4, 28, 30, 78, 10, 21, 2, 4, 11, 16. They've been higher ranked on the defensive side of the ball than on the offensive side of the ball every year since 2010. Brian Dutcher was on staff with Steve Fisher. Now it's become Brian Dutcher's program. And they have last year was the first year since 2019 that they finished lower in Ken Palm than they started the season. The team tends to get better. They are the program in the Mountain West. Obviously, 14-6 last year, 11-7 the previous year. It's not as dominant as the 15-3s, the 14-3s, 17-1s that they've put up, but they have become the program in the Mountain West, and they're the favorites in the Mountain West in the final season. And I think a big reason of why their offense is going to take a step forward is Sean Newman, transfer from Louisiana Tech, who gives them an element of playmaking that, while Nick Boyd was a good playmaker, I think they get one of the best playmakers in the country in Sean Newman.
I think you can call him the X factor of the San Diego State team. And the funny thing is, I obviously feel very similarly to how I did in 2023, or I guess the 2022-23 season with the San Diego State team. But the key thing that you needed with that San Diego State team was you needed Darion Trammell to come in and be a legit scorer for them to actually be, a top tier team in college basketball. And they were really good still. And very obviously, had talent, but
he made a run to the national championship game.
Trammell wasn't quite the player that we thought him to be, because his scoring didn't exactly translate from the WAC to the Mountain West. The skill that I think they need Newman to translate is way more. I have way more confidence in that than I did with Trammell. They just need him to come in and be a playmaker and set up good shots for guys that very obviously have talent. Guath and Bird, like we mentioned, we're getting NBA looks. So,
Austin, what are your thoughts on Newman and how he changes the way the offense is going to play?
Yeah, I mean, if you watched San Diego State's offense last year, you could see that maybe their biggest flaw, definitely one of the biggest flaws, is just the lack of playmaking from the guard side. You had Bird and Boyd, Davis bringing up the ball a lot, all talented offensive players, but none of them you'd say none of them were better playmakers than they are scorers. And I think that's just hurt a lot of the ball movement, hurt a lot of the creativity. Newman just gives you that extra angle of being able to make more passes, more plays that couldn't be made before, setting up guys like Bird to have easier shots. So he's shooting maybe less often, but more efficient shots where he's not shooting off the dribble as much. He's more in the pass, catch and shoot situations. I think that would be the ceiling for Newman, is just getting those guys going as shooters as opposed to having to be ball handlers and then shooters.
Reese Waters did not play last season for San Diego State. He's back in the mix. Came over from USC with really high expectations, was pretty good, but he was not maybe as good as we expected him to be in his first year at San Diego State. But it's now clear that they don't need him to be the leading scorer for this team. They have Miles Bird, who's probably going to be this team's leading scorer. What does a successful season for Reese Waters look like, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, Reese Waters should be the number 1 or 2 option for this offense. He has the ability to score, and honestly, I would say that I expect him slightly more to be the leading scorer than Bird, but either one wouldn't shock me. Yeah, I mean, Reese Waters, you're looking for probably about 12 points per game out of him. Good defense. He's a bit of a bigger guard that they'll be playing at the 2 compared to what Dutcher normally plays at the 2. You've had Butler, Trammell splitting the backcourt past years, this most recent year. you had Davis and Boyd. So Waters just gives you more size to that too than Dutcher's used to, which will help him defensively as well. So you're looking at a guy that has an offensive mismatch with his scoring ability and a defensive mismatch with his size over other Mountain West guards.
And that's kind of a key for this roster as a whole. Bird is super long. Gloth is super long. Waters is physical. Compton is huge. There's a lot of size on this roster, really 2 through 5. Obviously, Newman is not a bigger guard, but I wouldn't call him a smaller guard either. Maybe a little thin, but he certainly is not like a 5'10" guy out there. And when you go 6'5", 6'7", 6'8", 7 foot at 2 through 5, and then you have options off the bench to Gorville, you have Odin and Heidi, some guys that also can provide some size. I think this is going to be one of the bigger teams, and not just one of the bigger teams, but one of the teams that best uses its size in the conference, most functional athleticism, most functional size. Because I think that that's something that San Diego State has done really well in the past. When they've had bigger bodies, they've understood exactly how to use those bigger bodies. They've figured out the best way to maximize their size, I feel. And I think that this year's team is just going to be another example of a San Diego State team that is going to be dynamite size-wise, defensively, going to cover a lot of ground. They're going to suffocate you. And I think that there's offensive talent to also to score a whole bunch of points on that end of the floor. This is a San Diego State team. It's the most excited I've been since that team that won the national championship. That made the national championship
Not
game.
win the national championship.
They definitely did not win the national championship. They were not very close.
They won it in our hearts.
No, they did not. But I think that with this San Diego State team, there are pathways for them to be just dominant in the Mountain West. I don't think there's an obvious number 2. There are a lot of other really good teams in the Mountain West, but I think that San Diego State is clearly at the top of the pecking order, probably a tier or 2 above the rest of the league at the moment.
So we talked a lot about, some of the individual players, and I think, a lot of them are great. But one of the reasons I'm so high on this team is, first of all, you can bank on them having a top 15 defense. Like they're always going to be stellar defensively. I see no reason for them to be any worse defensively than they were last year, especially just because the sport's probably not going to be as good this year. It's definitely not going to be as good this year as it was last year, where there were so many elite defensive teams that it kind of bumped San Diego State down from their usual top 10, top 5 defense to top 15, top 16. And then the second thing is in 2022-23, first of all, they were worse offensively the year before that season than they were last year. And with that team, there were so few options for them to take leaps offensively. It was Trammell coming over and giving them a boost, Parrish giving them good minutes as a transfer. But that team had older guys. With
Matt Bradley was who he was.
With this team, not only do you bring in Newman, but and you get Waters back, but there's so many options here for breakout guys. Gloth is probably going to be much better offensively. Compton's one of the most talented players that they've ever recruited. And then off the bench, Latrell Davis was a sophomore last year. DeGorville's gonna be a sophomore this year. BJ Davis, is kind of that Trey Pulliam type player as a backup point guard where he's gonna pressure the ball and a really good point of attack defender. And then my X factor here is LZ Harrington. I guess I got kind of already said that Newman was the real X factor, but a guy that could totally surprise everyone, I think, is Harrington.
I'm with you on
very high recruiting pedigree before committing to Harvard. Kind of dropped off in rankings after that. I think he's a really talented player.
Something that I like about this San Diego State team is I think that they have a couple options to be the bench scorer type.
Yeah.
That elevates any offense. You saw it, you see it, just a guy that can come in. You saw it with Pettiford last year at Auburn that gave them a different look offensively, and was able to give them a guy to come into games and unlock things when it was tough. I think Davis has a little bit of that. Both Davises have a little bit of that. We'll see what Harrington can do. And I think that there are a bunch of options to be the guy that can unlock a game when it's not going well. Something that San Diego State, they've kind of been a little rigid offensively, just kind of stale out. And when it's bad, it gets really bad. I don't think they're going to have that problem this year because I think they're going to have more like some options that are a little bit more experienced than last year. I think they wanted Wayne McKinney to be something like that last year, and it just didn't work out at all. But I think that there's a chance where they can get really good bench scoring this year.
It's just nice looking at a team in late July and knowing that like they have 10 guys at minimum that can play.
It's also another key from that 23 team, the one that made the run. They were 39th in the country in minutes continuity. This team also is going to be pretty high in minutes continuity because you bring back Bird, you bring back Guath, you bring back Compton. Waters obviously doesn't factor into that equation because he didn't play last year. But DeGorville played a bunch of minutes last year. Compton played a bunch of minutes last year. Heidi played a bunch of minutes last year. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys coming back that gave you 30% of the minutes last year. I don't know how many other teams in the top 25 range can say that. Now, I would have to look, but that's a lot returning, especially for a team that's not in that doesn't have SEC coffers or Big Ten money to blow around. Obviously, they spent a lot to bring back Guath and to bring back Bird, but they definitely don't have the budget that, say, a Kentucky would have had, and they're able to bring back as much as they are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I don't think you mentioned specifically, but BJ Davis he is scoring 20 points in games last year. Like against Creighton, he was the guy in that blowout win over a very good Creighton team. Like he can come in off the bench and be that spark plug that they've been missing in last year with the consistency in scoring, right? If you have Waters, Bird having off days, then in theory you got other guys you can look for. And that was what made the 22-23 team so good. Is Bradley was having an off day, you had a Parrish or Trammell that could step up. You just have more guys you can look for rather than being so focused defensively and relying on one or two guys to get you buckets, kind of like they had last year without having Waters. Just bringing back Waters and moving Davis to the bench to give that bench spark plug, I think is huge.
Yeah, I don't think the guards, I don't think there's a guard on this team that's as good of a defender as Lamont Butler was, but I think Miles Bird on the wing is a terrific defender, and obviously Guath. And I think the guards as a whole are good enough defensively.
BJ Davis is a lockdown. He's not as flashy with the stats. He's not getting as many steals and blocks, but he's definitely a very good on-ball defender.
Yeah,
forcing players into tough shots. Definitely not Butler, but he is one of the better defensive guards San Diego State's had in recent years, and they've had a lot of them.
Yeah, and I think you don't need to be Lamont Butler to be a great defensive guard in the Mountain West. I think we've seen a whole bunch of really good defensive guards in the Mountain West over the past few years, and Lamont Butler is just one of them. I think they have a bunch of guys that can be really good defensively. They can throw you different lineups that will be good defensively, different lineups that will be. I think they have the potential to throw out some really good offensive lineups, which hasn't really been the case last couple of years, and I think that's going to be really fun. And I don't think it's going to be when they were 22nd in Ken Pom and 62nd in offense in 2024, which is their highest offense in the last 4 years. They had obviously Jaden Ledee being National Player of the Year, 6th in Ken Pom type good. Now they relied on him heavily. He was 30 usage. Nobody else on that team was above 20.3. I don't think they're going to have that, and I think that's a good thing. Ledee was awesome, but that ball went into him a lot. I don't think they're going to need the ball to go into one guy a lot in order to score.
Yeah.
Worst comes to worst defensively, you just funnel guys to the best rim protector in the country, right?
Yeah.
One of us not the best.
BJ Davis, funneling a guy into Magoon Guath, and if you kick it out, you got to pass it over Miles Bird. That's not a fun look for opposing guards.
No,
not at all. Not at all. Anything else we want to get into before we go?
I mean, I think the biggest question is kind of going to be that 5 spot for San Diego State. If we're talking about a weakness. Heidi has shown flashes, but he's not quite shown as many flashes as a lot of these other guys we've talked about. Compton is he's an interesting 5 because he doesn't quite have the height that Coleman Jones, Heidi, Mensa have had in recent years, but he's big and strong. He's the strongest guy on the team probably. So it'll kind of be interesting to see what they play there because I expect Guelph to play the 4 in that starting spot, could transition to the 5 if players get into foul trouble or certain lineups. But what do you guys think about that 5 spot with Heidi and Compton?
Austin, I'm kind of just going off what you told me. Like I know you told me that Heidi was better in the second half of the season last year, which is good because I saw him play a couple times in the first half of the season, and he was not good as being favorable.
Yeah.
I think Heidi's okay. Like, is he awesome? But no. But he can give you solid minutes.
If Guath isn't following and is better conditioned, he won't see the floor a ton. So
I don't know.
I think
Jonathan,
do you know how many games Magoon Guath fouled out of last year?
Guath's not fouling out a whole lot.
Do you know how many times he fouled out last year?
Guath?
I guess 2.
2.
I was going to say 2.
In Zaga, where he was terrible offensively in that game. He had a couple blocks, but he fouled out in 14 minutes.
And I mean, part of him only playing 48% of the minutes. It wasn't that he was in foul trouble.
I mean, he missed 5 games too. So
yeah, that is true. That is true.
And 6 if you include the Utah State game where he played 2 minutes. But if you look after that UNLV game, 31, 29, 34, 37, 32, 29, 34, 23. The 23, they were up by 20. And then 24 in the North Carolina game in the tournament. So he was getting big minutes. I don't think the minutes are a problem for Magoon Guath.
I mean, I'm fairly certain he's going to have some of the best on-off splits in the country next season.
All right, Jonathan,
his impact is pretty unmatched.
Anything else?
I want to shout out Thakbor Majak, the redshirt freshman. He's a redshirt out last year. Big man, 7-footer, real similar athletic profile to Magoon Guath. Have never seen him play basketball, but I have no idea what to expect. But he could be a second Magoon Guath. He could be never touching the floor. We'll have to see. But I texted Sam before that 22-23 season about Jaden Ledee, and I texted him before last season about Magoon Guath. And I'm not quite as confident in Majak as I am in Guath and Ledee, but I'm just putting that out there that I wouldn't be completely shell-shocked if he is an okay basketball player.
That's a common theme. I mean, these guys just breed athletes.
That's a great line. Jonathan,
he's a classic Brian Dutcher, find the diamond in the rough that's athletic and turn him into a defensive star. And hopefully he learns some offensive skills in that.
Real quick, Austin, before we go, what is their non-conference looking like?
Well, they got the neutral site in Phoenix game against Arizona. And in the players there, they've got the 2 big ones against Michigan and Oregon. And so those 3 will headline the non-con slate. They're going to have to win at least one of them. You should be looking at them to win at least 2. But all 3 of those games should be top 25 matchups, big resume boost, especially in the Mountain West where who knows? There's always going to be 1 or 2 teams that end up doing better than we expected. But who knows what we're getting with the rest of the Mountain West this year. Grand Canyon's joining. Doubt they're one of those teams that steps up, but that just gives another option. So I think those non-con slate games, those 3 are going to be pretty important.
Guath against those Michigan bigs and then against Biddle, the following day or whatever it is.
Guath and Biddle was fun last year. Should get a good
Biddle there. That was the Nate Biddle announces himself to the world at Players Era last year.
Yeah, he had the big game against Alabama in the chip.
Yeah.
to the world is subjective if you look at those crowds.
To our world.
Yeah. Well, Austin was there.
I was there.
He was there.
I was
All right,
there.
Sam, you want me to take us home?
Yeah, Jonathan, I think it's time.
All right. If you came to hear about Tyler Self, where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about San Diego State finding these diamond in the rough kids that nobody hears of until November, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This has been Season 6, Episode 20, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Steelers Tip-Off Talk San Diego State Edition. We'll see you next time.